Hey, hi, hello, and welcome to my channel where we do talk all things true crime. If that's something that you're into, go ahead and smash the subscribe button and please hit that like button for me. That way we can get more people to watch this video. It really does help us. So it's April the 6th. We are on Saturday. Thank you. We are at the weekend. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and just get to the video that I want to show you guys today. Basically, we did a live over the Idaho 4 case a couple days ago. And whenever we do a podcast or we do a video, I always try to go ahead and release the video without any interruptions, especially if it's a video that you can't find on YouTube. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and get right into it. This is going to be Savage Instincts, the Mind of Bryan Kohberger. And like I said, we went over this the other day, and they're basically just going to go into the psyche of the suspected murder, Bryan Kohberger. They have a few different experts on here that are going to talk about the case. It was very interesting when we watched it, so I hope you guys enjoy. It's only about 23 minutes long, so not too long. And I will see you guys on the other side.
For 7 weeks, the town of Moscow, Idaho remained on high alert.
The Moscow, Idaho killer who slaughtered these 4 students in the prime of their lives is out there somewhere at this hour.
Students are facing imminent fear right now and are fleeing campus because of that.
Please just turn yourself in. Please don't make these families.
Until finally, the tides turned.
The suspect in the slaying of 4 University of Idaho students was apprehended. 28-year-old grad student Bryan Kohberger was taken into custody in Pennsylvania.
He had no prior record, no connection to the victims, no plausible motive, but Moscow police were certain they got their guy. Who is Bryan Kohberger? What makes him tick?
I think he was sinister for quite some time.
This is difficult, getting inside the mind of someone like this.
This type of person is actually born.
Although police say they have quite a lot of evidence against him, he remains confident that he's going to be exonerated.
He definitely had an ego and wanted to wield that.
One of the basic tenets of an antisocial personality is lying and deception.
Does anybody think this wasn't his first murder? We all know there are evil people in the world, but how did they get that way? It's a question that has fascinated scholars, criminologists, and psychologists for decades. Some argue that certain individuals possess inherent traits that make them more prone to violent behavior. Others believe that environmental factors, upbringing, and life experiences are to blame. While this nature versus nurture debate may truly never be settled, it forces us to explore what drives certain individuals to kill. In this special, we're going to evaluate suspected murderer Bryan Kohberger on a psychological level. We'll investigate his background, his behavior, and his actions the night of the crime. Our goal is not to determine his guilt or innocence. Only a jury of his peers can do that. It's simply to see if he fits the profile of someone capable of taking 4 innocent lives and ask the larger question, are killers born or made? Today I have on the panel 3 experts that are going to help us better understand Bryan Kohberger. To my right is clinical forensic psychologist Craig Wetterer. We have Jason Jensen, criminal profiler, Dana Anderson, forensic psychologist. So to start this off, I think we need to go back to the time when these murders occurred. So at 2 weeks, we knew some particulars about the crime scene. We knew some of the positioning. So tell me what all that said to you as far as the type of criminal actually committed this crime.
It appeared that this was an organized, premeditated attack where somebody entered the home, made their way up to the 3rd floor, encountered 2 women. I believe one of the 2 women, either Maddie or Kaylee, were the intended target, and it was not expected that both would be in the same room.
As forensic psychologists, what kind of a person goes into an inhabited dwelling with a knife thinking that they're going to be successful?
Well, one of the first things that I thought about was who could have the physical stamina to do such a thing, like to actually stab multiple people.
That takes quite a bit of bravado to be able to enter a residence, possibly not knowing how many people are in there. So psychologically, this is somebody who seems to have overconfidence.
No matter what prompted the killer to enter 1122 Kings Road on that cold November night, he must have had a plan. Or did he? In the world of profiling, we have two descriptions, organized and disorganized. So in your opinion, what is he, organized or disorganized?
Well, I think maybe it started as an organized offense, but it quickly became disorganized.
I totally agree with you. Dana, do you agree with that assessment?
We're looking at periods of time where he was allegedly surveillancing, right? He was in the area. So he was thinking about this for some time in his mind.
Bryan Kohberger's cell phone pinged 12 times near the house in the weeks and months before the killing. According to police, that could possibly indicate the stalking of one or more of the victims by Kohberger and possibly the planning of those brutal killings.
And he was organizing himself. He was thinking it through. He's probably rehearsing it in his head. And maybe he wanted to commit the perfect crime.
Clearly, we had premeditation. He felt like he had everybody mapped out, figured out who would be in what room. By the time he got there, he just sees the lights go out in Maddie's room, thinking Maddie's in the room all by herself. But when he goes in there and encounters two, I think that's when it all fell apart.
Well, does everybody agree that he went up to Maddie's room intentionally, that she was most probably the target?
Yes.
Yeah.
But where did Kohberger first meet Maddie? Some say it could have been at a local restaurant where she and Xana both worked as servers. I think there's a possibility he was obsessed with Maddie. There's a possibility he went into the restaurant. There's a possibility there was an exchange. There was a conversation. There could have been an advance. There could have been a compliment that was rebuffed or laughed at.
It was someone that they knew, somebody that they desired. I felt it was a stalker situation. He waited till all the occupants were home and the lights went out.
When he went up there, it's dimly lit. He's dressed in black. He's holding a knife in his right hand. We know he's right-handed. And it's November. The girls are both in bed, but they're not lying in bed with no covers on. So you have a lump that you believe is your intended victim. And during that attack, Kaylee wakes up. The attack on her was more violent and more hands-on and more facial. So the fight was on. But in party houses like this one, noise, even at 4 a.m., wasn't that out of the ordinary. Dylan, one of the surviving roommates, said she was awoken by the scuffle, but thought it was Kaylee playing with her dog. He was trying to get out of there, and Xana came out of her room and confronted him. So how does that go into the psychology of somebody at the scene, and how does it go into the profiling? You know, you can make the decision, okay, she sees me, but I've got a mask on and I'm all black. Tell me why attack her, and then why a sleeping Ethan Chapin in bed? Why attack him? Where's the mindset?
So it depends on whether we're dealing with a psychopath. I've interviewed a lot of murderers, and many of the crimes that are committed are disorganized and they escalate, right? So the initial intention is not to kill, but it turns into that because they panic. They feel like, I'm all in now. I'm already going to get caught.
Kaylee, Maddie, Xana, and Ethan had died at the hands of a crazed monster. But for some reason, Dylan and their roommate, Bethany, were spared.
There was a chilling statement from a roommate of the four victims who said on the night of the murders she had heard noises from her roommate's room, crying, and then a male voice saying quote, "It's okay, I'm going to help you."
Somebody just savagely stabbed and sliced to death two young women. Wait, I can help you. What's he trying to do? How do you elevate to that kind of a homicide and then de-escalate to a calm voice? No, wait, I can help you. What's he doing?
So ominous when I heard that statement. And I think about the time when he applied to be a security guard officer and the time he applied to work at the police station. You're in a position of power and authority. Think about that.
Is that a key factor with this type of a suspect, power and
Oh,
authority?
power and control for sure, especially if rape was the initial intent. We have power rapists and power and control are primary drivers for rape. It's not about the sex, it's about the power and the control over somebody else.
If power and control were his motivation, why didn't he kill the other two roommates, Dylan and Bethany? Did he not know they were there?
According to new unsealed filings in the gruesome Idaho murders, one of the two surviving roommates came face to face with the killer, who was wearing a black mask, in the early hours of November the 13th, before the roommate then locked herself in a room.
This is a teenage girl who was traumatized and most likely paralyzed in fear. And it's a miracle that she was not murdered.
I don't believe she opened the door and was standing there face to face with the suspect. I think she opened the door, saw the suspect, and I'm not sure the suspect knew that she saw him. As news of the quadruple homicide rippled through the nation, the killer's weapon of choice took many by surprise.
With the autopsies completed, the coroner has confirmed 4 homicides. All victims stabbed to death were told likely with the same knife, possibly something like this K-bar tactical knife with a 6-inch blade commonly issued by the military.
Why a Marine Corps K-bar? Even if you're interested in the military, there's a lot of other knives that they use. It's very much a utility knife. You could chop a small tree down with it, cut firewood, you can dig holes, you can do anything with it. It's pretty indestructible. In my life, I've done some training with knives, and this would be the last knife that you would use in close quarters in this situation. There's 100 other knives that would be better suited. So, in my opinion, is the K-bar symbolic? According to reports, Kohberger purchased a K-bar knife on Amazon in April of 2022, 7 months before the crime took place.
If it was part of the ultimate plan, he was thinking about this well before he even moved to Pullman.
There was one movie that not only actually showed a K-bar for about 15 minutes, but they were showing training, and he's showing exactly where to attack a human being. The right side, liver, lung, throat. I mean, you wonder if it is somehow symbolic to him of power and manhood and all the things that he wanted to be that he wasn't. Just who is Bryan Kohberger? What had his life been before he had moved to Washington?
Everyone kind of over magnifying that he's this PhD student. But who was Bryan Kohberger way before this? He had a substance abuse problem. Stole his sister's cell phone, he took it to the mall and he cashed it out, made a couple $100, probably because he wanted to get high. And now we're here. Well, I'm sure there's a lot that went on in between time.
Well, he had probably 12 years of progression from the time he was getting involved with drugs. And I guess the question is does anybody think this wasn't his first murder?
Well, it's hard to know. I have seen cases in which an individual commits 4 murders all at once, like a spree killing, and there wasn't evidence that they had committed any other crimes. We don't know what else he has done in the past, because many crimes go unsolved.
Why would he apply to be a police officer, right? I don't think his intentions were good.
Actually, there's been several serial killers and murderers that have gotten in those positions.
They have.
And he wanted to be in a position like that, where he'd be seen as more superior or intelligent, right? And you're in that position. And those positions also demand respect, and he was seeking that.
During Kohberger's time at DeSales University, he studied under forensic psychologist Catherine Ramsland, who wrote a book about serial killer BTK, who also worked in law enforcement. Ramsland and BTK have been in touch for over a decade as he serves 10 consecutive life sentences. The one case that they keep coming back to is BTK. And the irony with BTK is his first victim, he stalked, surveilled, planned, calculated. He went in the back door and there was the whole family there. Now you'd think, I'm just going to make an excuse, back out and say, oh, I came into the wrong house. No, he killed all four. And to me, that is the one connection to BTK.
Well, I would think because he studied BTK, he was trying to learn how to commit that crime and just one up BTK.
Let's compare him to some other people. You know, people have kicked around Ted Bundy. I'm not impressed with the comparison myself.
And you'll notice that with Ted Bundy, this grandiosity and this sort of bravado and arrogance that a psychopath has, and very, very intelligent, but he also, he talked, would give interviews. I don't see that with Bryan Kohberger.
He's not a serial killer. This was his only crime, I believe. He definitely made enough mistakes for a beginner. The killer's biggest mistake, however, was leaving a crucial piece of evidence at the crime scene: the sheath to the K-bar knife.
Kohberger's DNA was found on a knife sheath left next to one of the victim's bodies. Police then matched that DNA to trash from the suspect's family home in Pennsylvania.
Does it kind of bother you that if he wouldn't have been so stupid as to leave his DNA in a knife sheath, drive his own car, and other complete screw-ups that he made, that you three might be talking to this guy on a case?
He might have been a professor, you know, teaching in a criminology program.
What a sick guy he was. Someone that was a criminal justice major, master's, getting his PhD, and he thought because he studied criminals that he was going to be able to get away with what he did.
But Kohberger's teaching stint wasn't going quite so smoothly.
In the doctoral program that he was in at Washington State University, he was having quite a bit of difficulty in his student teaching roles.
He's not a people person. Wasn't he the guy that, I'm going to go into any room and I'm going to prove I'm the smartest guy here?
That's what other students had reported. This suggests that there are elements of narcissism going on here. Need for power, need for admiration, grandiosity, those sorts of things.
He definitely had an ego and wanted to wield that.
Did Kohberger's narcissism develop once he got a taste of power in his TA position? Or had this always been part of his identity?
The investigation begins now. And as it relates to this guy Kohberger, now that he is out there as the defendant, the issue is, what did he say? Who did he hang out with? You know, when he was in school, did he talk about doing this kind of thing as a criminal justice major? He was interested in what the criminal was thinking when a criminal committed a violent crime. So there's all kinds of additional evidence that will be gathered at this point going forward.
There is a genetic relationship to the development of a personality disorder, but there's the epigenetic crest. So what we mean by that is, yes, someone may have a genetic vulnerability to develop an antisocial personality disorder. Not everybody develops an antisocial personality disorder. Depending on their environment, depending on how they're shaped, depending on who influences them.
But how do you identify them? And once you identify them, what's society going to do about it? Incarcerate them? No.
The biggest problem with personality pathology generally is that people with personality disorders generally don't go for help. They generally don't get treatment because they don't think there's a problem. The problem is not them. The problem is you.
They refuse to see themselves for who they really are. They are so out of touch with their own psychology. They do not understand themselves. And if you attempt to give them any feedback, they can feel so deeply wounded.
Isn't that kind of the starter kit for a serial killer? We can't have any rules in society that I can't break because I'm smarter, better, and more privileged, and I should be able to do this.
The rules don't apply to them.
Exactly.
And so like Kohberger, the rules, that's nice. Not for me.
Breaking tonight, murder suspect Bryan Kohberger landed late tonight in Idaho to face charges.
Investigators say the evidence against Bryan Kohberger speaks volumes, even if the accused killer had little to say in court today.
The maximum penalty for this offense, if you were to plead guilty or be found guilty, is death or imprisonment for life. Do you understand?
Yes.
You watch him in court. You see his demeanor. Can you give us any labels to what you would say, if I had to say Bryan Kohberger is?
Well, from the available data and information that's out there, some of those elements of narcissism, I don't know, Dana, do you agree, or do you think that there's other personality traits that might be present as well?
It'll be interesting to see if he consents to being evaluated. Most typically, we come in at the beginning. If their defense attorney says, I don't think this guy understands what's happening, and then a court-appointed forensic psychologist will evaluate the defendant in custody.
Although it's unknown if Kohberger has ever been diagnosed with mental illness, a series of online posts written during his teenage years indicate his battle with visual snow syndrome, of which depression and anxiety are often cited as symptoms. Visual snow can also cause individuals to see static-like dots, but it's unclear if that applied to Kohberger.
Hallucinations are generally rare in genuine psychotic disorders. We don't see that frequently.
What's the connection between I have visual snow to murdering 4 kids with a knife? How does that solve your visual snow?
Yeah, I don't know how that would have any impact or bearing at all.
He could have this. It could be connected to a psychiatric
Well, if it's possible, that would require a full, psychological evaluation where we're going to be administering some standardized testing.
Although Kohberger's social media was scrubbed by police shortly after he was taken into custody, his SoundCloud account remained online. The account is listed as belonging to Bryan in Effort, Pennsylvania, and shares the same username that Kohberger previously used on the mental health forum.
Eagles going louder than my motherfucking beagle, and your life you get no sequel. Leave your loved ones crying like some seagulls. You are not my equal, you are equal, but I'm people.
Do these lyrics give us an insight into his state of mind? Have his feelings of angst and rage continued to fester or even intensify all these years?
You look at people who have engaged in acts of extreme violence, you take a look at some of the psychological dimensions and variables of these individuals. Oftentimes they're seen as socially awkward. Sometimes they're on the autism spectrum. Many times they're not. They have difficulty in establishing intimate relationships with opposite gender.
Things aren't going well in their life. They're totally impaired. They're in a not good mental state.
Even if Kohberger is found to have a psychotic disorder, he's unable to use that to his advantage if he's found guilty. Idaho is one of the country's 4 states that does not have an insanity defense.
Generally, defense attorneys are reluctant to use that defense unless they've got clear evidence that this person has a psychotic disorder, a genuine mental illness that we have good data to support. You have to approach what they say with suspicion. The basic tenets of an antisocial personality is lying and deception.
So in closing, I just want to thank you all. You've educated me in a lot of areas that I actually had questions. There's going to be a lot more to talk about, and we're going to see what evidence they have, and we're going to be able to actually nail down, is Bryan Kohberger the murderer of 4 college students, or is he not?
Okay, so that's the end of the video there. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below about this documentary, because we are going to do the second part of this documentary. It'll actually be tonight, and this probably won't go out till tomorrow. But go ahead and drop your thoughts below. I would love to know what you guys think about this documentary, and I will see you guys all later this evening. Have a wonderful rest of your Saturday.